The little girl was asleep on his shoulder when Evan Carter walked into the bank, one card in his wallet, an eviction notice at home with 7 days left and no other option. The card had belonged to his wife. She had pressed it into his hand the morning before she died. He had never once used it. The woman in the VIP lounge laughed when she saw him step past the rope pearl earrings expensive bag, the particular amusement of someone who has never had to wonder. Then the balance appeared on the screen at the premier desk. The advisor went completely still. The monitor faced outward just enough. Claire Harmon stopped laughing. The eviction notice was taped to the front door when he got home from his shift. Evan Carter peeled it off without reading it because he already knew what it said. 3 months behind on rent, 7 days to vacate. He folded it. Once set it on the kitchen table next to a crayon drawing Lucy had made at daycare, a stick figure family with 3 people in it, one of them with a halo, and stood there in the small kitchen for a long time without moving. He had been doing that a lot lately, standing in rooms, not moving, as if his body needed a moment to decide whether it was worth continuing. It always decided yes eventually, mostly because Lucy would wake up from her nap and call for him, and that voice, high and clear and entirely certain that he would answer, was the only thing that still worked on him the way it was supposed to. Lucy was 4 years old. She had her mother's eyes, the kind of dark brown that looked almost amber in direct light, and she had developed a habit of patting Evan's face with both hands when she thought he looked sad, which was often. She did not fully understand that Sarah was gone. She understood that Mommy was in heaven because that was what Evan had told her, and she had accepted it the way children accept things completely, without resistance, already moving on to ask what was for dinner. Evan was the one who could not move on. Sarah had died 11 months ago. Ovarian cancer diagnosed, late, progressed fast. From diagnosis to the end had been 7 months, and in those 7 months, Evan had watched his wife, the most quietly determined person he had ever known, go through treatment with the kind of calm that frightened him more than her illness did. She was not pretending. She was simply not willing to spend the time she had left being afraid. She had also apparently been doing things he did not know about. The card was in the small wooden box she kept on her nightstand. He had not opened the box for months after she died, could not bring himself to. And when he finally did, he found the card sitting underneath a folded letter addressed to him in her handwriting. The letter said, "Only use this when you have no other choice. I love you. Take care of our girl." He had read it so many times the paper had gone soft at the folds. But he had not used the card. He told himself it was because there was still something left to try some bill. He could defer some extra shift. He could pick up some way to keep the apartment without touching whatever small amount Sarah had managed to save without him knowing. He told himself he was protecting it, whatever it was. The truth was simpler and harder than that. Using the card meant admitting that this was the moment she had anticipated, that she had seen clearly exactly how bad things would get, and had prepared for it quietly while he was in the other room pretending everything was fine. Using the card meant she had known him better than he had known himself, and he was not sure he was ready to sit with that. But 7 days, and Lucy's drawings on the table, and nothing left in the checking account that would make any real difference. So he put the card in his wallet, picked Lucy up from daycare, and told her they were going on a small errand before dinner. "Where?" she asked, already reaching up for his shoulder, her preferred position. "The bank," he said. She nodded as if this were perfectly reasonable, rested her cheek against the side of his neck, and was asleep before they reached the end of the block. Ridgeline National Bank occupied the corner of a block, downtown, the kind of building with marble floors and brushed brass fixtures that were designed to make certain people feel welcome and certain other people aware of the distance. Evan had walked past it 100 times. He had never had a reason to go in. He pushed through the glass door carefully, one hand on Lucy's back to keep her steady against his shoulder. The lobby was cool and quiet. A row of standard teller windows ran along the left wall. The right side opened into a separate area, lower lighting leather chairs, a small desk with a frosted glass partition, and a sign mounted on a polished stand that read, Premier Services. He walked to the nearest teller window, a young man in his mid-20s, who glanced up and offered a practiced smile. Hi there. What can I help you with today? I just need to check the balance on this card, Evan said. He set it on the counter. The teller picked it up, looked at the front, then turned it over. Something shifted in his expression. Not dramatic, just a small recalibration, the way someone looks when they realize the item in front of them belongs in a different category than expected. Sir, this is a Premier account card, the teller said. He kept his voice neutral, but his eyes moved briefly toward the right side of the room. For cardholders with accounts at this tier, we handle everything through our Premier Services desk. I can walk you over, or I just need the balance, Evan said. He was not trying to be difficult. He was tired, Lucy was heavy, and he did not particularly want to walk anywhere or sit down in a leather chair while someone in a good suit decided how to handle him. He wanted a number. He wanted to know if there was anything in there that could buy them more time, or if this had been, as he feared, an empty gesture, Sarah's way of saying goodbye without saying it. I understand, the teller said. But the system won't let me access Premier accounts from this terminal. I'm sorry, it's just how it's set up. He gestured again toward the right. They'll take care of you right away over there. Evan looked at the Premier Services area. Claire Harmon was already there, settled into one of the leather chairs with a coffee she had not paid for, and a tablet she was scrolling through, with the boredom of someone who had spent a great deal of time waiting in comfortable rooms. She was dressed the way people dress when they do not have to think about what things cost. When she looked up and saw him worn jacket child asleep on his shoulder, out of place in every way the room had been designed, to make visible the corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something less generous than that. Evan was aware of the look. He had been getting versions of it for 11 months from people who saw a man who had clearly been losing ground and did not want to stand too close to that kind of gravity. He had learned to let it pass through him without stopping. There was nothing else to do with it. He shifted Lucy to his other shoulder, picked up the card from the counter, and walked across the lobby toward the Premier Services desk. Because there was nothing left to try, and 7 days was 7 days. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a version of Sarah's voice told him quietly and without drama that it was time. A woman in a tailored navy blazer was already standing at the desk when he approached. Her nameplate read, Victoria Hale, Senior Client Advisor. She looked at him the way the teller had looked at the card, a quick private recalibration, and then composed her face into something professional. Welcome to Premier Services, Victoria said. How can I assist you today? I need to check the balance on this account, Evan said, and set the card on the desk between them. Victoria picked it up. She looked at it longer than the teller had. Then she looked at him, and for just a moment, something passed across her face that was neither professional nor unkind, only careful the way someone looks when they are not yet sure what they are dealing with. Of course, she said. Please have a seat. Victoria did not sit down right away. She stood on the other side of the desk, the card held between 2 fingers, and studied it, the way someone studies a document they are not sure is real. The card itself was unremarkable in appearance. Matte black, no visible account number on the face, only a small embossed logo in the lower corner that Evan had never paid attention to. Victoria recognized it. That much was clear from the way her posture changed, a barely perceptible straightening, the professional composure reassembling itself over something more guarded underneath. Can I ask how you came to have this card? Victoria asked. Her voice was even practiced, the kind of even that takes training to maintain. My wife left it for me, Evan said. He kept his voice flat, not because he was trying to match her register, but because he did not have the energy to explain himself to a stranger in a good blazer. Lucy stirred against his shoulder, made a small sound, and settled again. He adjusted his arm without looking down. She passed away. About 11 months ago. She told me to use it if I ever needed to. Victoria looked at him for a moment longer than was strictly necessary, then pulled her chair out and sat. She typed something into her terminal, entered the card number manually. The machine that would have read it magnetically was not the right kind for this tier of account, and waited while the system processed. The terminal ran slower at certain depths of account structure. The seconds stretched. From across the room, Evan could feel Claire Harmon watching. She had lowered her tablet and was observing the desk with the particular attention of someone who has decided that whatever is happening over there is more interesting than what she came in for. He did not look at her. He focused on a point just above Victoria's shoulder and waited. "I'm going to need to verify some information," Victoria said. "Standard procedure for accounts at this level. Can I see your ID?" He handed over his driver's license. She photographed it with a small scanner, typed again, waited again. The room was very quiet. The only sounds were the ambient hum of the building's ventilation and Lucy breathing against his collar. "And the name on the account is that Sarah Carter." "Yes," and he said. "Your relationship to the account holder, husband, widower." Victoria nodded once, as if filing this away. She did not say she was sorry, which Evan appreciated more than he would have appreciated condolences. She was doing her job. He was here to get a number. That was the entire transaction, and he wanted it to stay that way. The terminal made a sound, a short, soft chime, and Victoria's eyes moved to the screen. What happened to her face in the next 2 seconds was something Evan would remember for a long time. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was involuntary. Every trained layer of professional composure dropped away at once, and what was underneath was simple, unguarded shock. She looked at the screen. She looked at Evan. She looked at the screen again. "Mr. Carter," she said, and her voice had changed in a way she was clearly trying to control. "I need you. Could you come around to this side of the desk? I'd like you to see this directly." She rotated the monitor outward as he stood, a clean, deliberate motion that angled the screen toward the room. From where Claire Harmon sat, less than 4 feet away, the digits were fully visible. Claire looked at the screen. Her hand, which had been reaching for her coffee, stopped mid-air. She set nothing down. She simply went still, her eyes fixed on the number, and did not look away. Evan came around to Victoria's side and looked at the screen. The number was right there, white digits on a dark interface, perfectly legible, requiring no interpretation. $78,412,219. He read it twice, then a third time, the way you reread a sentence when the words make grammatical sense, but the meaning refuses to land. His mind went through the obvious sequence: wrong account, wrong screen, some kind of display error, and discarded each option as his eyes kept returning to the same number in the same place. "Is that," he started. "That is the current balance of the account associated with this card," Victoria said carefully. "Your name is listed as the sole beneficiary." Evan straightened up slowly. Lucy's weight on his shoulder suddenly felt different, not heavier, but more specific, more real, the way physical sensations sharpen when the brain needs something to hold on to. He was aware that his breathing had changed, that his heartbeat was doing something irregular, and that he had absolutely no idea what to do with any of this. "I don't understand," he said. It was not a question directed at Victoria. It was a statement directed at no one in particular, at the room, at the situation, at the version of his wife, who had apparently been carrying something this enormous in complete silence, while he sat across the dinner table from her and talked about whether they could afford to fix the kitchen faucet. Claire Harmon had set her tablet face down on the chair beside her. The amusement that had been in her expression when he walked in was entirely gone, replaced by something that looked like the beginning of comprehension, the particular expression of a person who has just realized they have badly misread a room. Victoria recovered herself faster than he did. She was already pulling up a secondary window on her terminal, her fingers moving with the controlled efficiency of someone who has decided that the best response to an extraordinary situation is to treat it as an administrative one. "Mr. Carter, I want to be transparent with you," she said. "An account balance at this level requires our compliance team to verify the fund's origin before we can authorize any transactions. That's not a reflection on you. It's protocol for any account over a certain threshold. It protects the account holder." She glanced at him, then back at the screen. "I'm going to need a few minutes to pull the full account history." "Fine," Evan said. He sat back down in the chair across from the desk, Lucy still against his shoulder, and waited. From where he was sitting, he could see the premier services area, the way the rest of the room saw it. 2 other clients had drifted slightly in their chairs, small repositioning movements, the kind people make when they want a better sightline without appearing to look. Claire Harmon had not bothered to reposition. She was simply watching the tablet, forgotten her coffee gone cold. Victoria worked in silence for several minutes. She picked up a desk phone at one point, spoke quietly into it, listened, said 2 or 3 words and hung up. She typed. She scrolled. She printed something from a secondary printer to her left and read it with the careful attention of someone trying to understand a document the first time through. Then she set the printed sheet down and looked at Evan with an expression that had moved past, guarded into something more complicated, not quite pity, not quite awe, somewhere between the two. "The funds originated from a private medical foundation," she said, "established approximately 2 years ago, the Whitmore Family Medical Trust. The full amount was consolidated and transferred directly into this account 14 months ago." She stopped, as if making sure she had the sequence right. 3 months before your wife passed." Evan absorbed this slowly. "What is the Whitmore Foundation?" "It's a legitimate entity, registered, fully documented, every transfer accounted for. There's no issue with the funds, Mr. Carter. Compliance confirmed it while we were sitting here." She set the paper down and looked at him directly. "But I think, and I want to be careful saying this, I think you may not know why they sent it." He held her gaze. "I don't know anything," he said. "I didn't know this account existed until about 3 weeks ago." Victoria reached into the printed file and removed a second page, a document that had come through with the compliance confirmation, something attached to the original account setup that had been scanned and preserved in the file records. She turned it so he could read it across the desk. It was a letter. Not to him. This one was addressed to the foundation, written in the formal language of medical correspondence. But the signature at the bottom was Sarah's, and the handwriting was hers. And seeing it was like being hit by something he had not seen coming at all. Victoria gave him time to read it. She did not rush him or explain what it said. She let the document do what it needed to do. The letter described a bone marrow donation. Sarah had registered as a donor years before they met, and 14 months before she died, while she was already in treatment, already sick during a period when Evan remembered her going to what she called follow-up appointments that ran long and left her tired in a way she attributed to her own illness. She had been identified as a match for a child, a 7-year-old boy named Thomas Whitmore, who had been in treatment for leukemia for 2 years and had run out of other options. The transplant had taken place in a different city over 3 days during a stretch when Sarah told Evan she was visiting her college roommate. The procedure was successful. The boy recovered. The Whitmore family had wanted to compensate her. Sarah had refused. She had refused multiple times in writing, and the foundation had been established anyway, held in trust, inactive, with instructions to transfer the full amount to the account she designated only after her death, which she had stated she understood was likely. She had not wanted Evan to know because she had not wanted him to feel that she was trading her life for money, or that he owed anything to anyone, or that Lucy's future was something that had been bought rather than given freely. Evan read to the end of the letter. Then he read it again. Lucy shifted against his shoulder, turned her face into his neck, and made a small sound that was not quite waking. He had sat in a hospital room with Sarah for 7 months. He had held her hand through every treatment. He had driven her to appointments and waited in waiting rooms and watched her move through pain with a patience that had sometimes frightened him because it seemed too complete, too ready. And the entire time, she had been holding this. Not because she was hiding it from him out of deception, but because she had already decided, in the private architecture of who she was, that it was not a thing that needed to be shared. It was something she had done because it was what you did when you could do it, when a child needed what you had to give. The money was beside the point for her. It had always been beside the point. Evan set the letter down on the desk. He looked at the surface of the desk, at the grain of the wood under the glass top, and felt something break open in his chest. Not grief, exactly, because grief was already there, and had been there for 11 months. This was something older and heavier, the specific weight of realizing you did not fully know someone you loved completely, and that the part you did not know was larger and more generous than anything you might have imagined on your own. "I can't take this," he said. His voice came out quiet and certain, the way a voice sounds when it is reporting a fact rather than making an argument. "It's not. I didn't do anything. She did something. I was there." Victoria looked at him steadily across the desk. She did not challenge him, and she did not agree with him. She simply looked at him the way someone looks when they understand that what is happening in front of them is not a financial transaction anymore, and they are willing to wait for it to be whatever it actually is. Across the room, Claire Harmon's hands were folded in her lap. She was not watching with amusement now, or with the distant curiosity of someone observing an unfamiliar species. She was watching with her whole face, the way people watch things they didn't know they needed to see. No one in the room said anything for a long moment. The ventilation hummed. Lucy breathed. The number on the terminal screen stayed exactly where it was, indifferent to the weight it carried. Evan sat with his hands loose on his knees and looked at Sarah's letter still lying on the desk between them. He had read it twice. He understood every word. The understanding did not help. If anything, it made the specific pressure in his chest worse, the kind of pressure that does not come from grief alone, but from grief combined with something more complicated, something that felt, if he was being honest with himself, like shame. She had been sick. She had been in treatment for her own cancer, navigating her own fear about her own survival, and she had still found the capacity to do something that large and that quiet for a stranger's child. While he was at home managing Lucy's daycare schedule and working double shifts and worrying about the electric bill, Sarah had been lying in a hospital bed in another city, giving the marrow out of her bones to a 7-year-old boy who needed it. And she had not told him, not because she thought he would stop her, because she had not wanted it to be a conversation. She had simply decided and done it, and come home and continued being his wife. He thought about every dinner they had eaten together in those months, every night he had fallen asleep next to her, thinking he understood the shape of what they were going through. He had believed he was present, that showing up, staying close, carrying the practical weight of their lives while she focused on getting through treatment, was the thing she needed from him and the thing he was giving. And he had been right as far as it went. But it had not gone as far as he thought. There had been an entire room inside her that he had not known existed, and in that room she had been doing something that would outlast her in ways he was only now beginning to see. That was what made accepting the money feel impossible. Not the money itself. He was not naive enough to pretend that $78 million would not change. Everything would not eliminate the eviction notice and Lucy's uncertain future, and every version of the fear he had been carrying since the diagnosis. He knew exactly what it would do. That was not the problem. The problem was that he felt like a man who had arrived late to a story he was supposed to be part of, and now someone was handing him the reward for a journey he had not taken. He looked down at Lucy. She had shifted in her sleep, her head tilted back slightly, mouth open, one small hand curled around the lapel of his jacket. She looked completely at ease, the way children look when they have no reason to doubt that the person holding them is capable of holding them. That trust, unreasoned entire the specific trust that a 4-year-old has in the person who has never once put her down, was the most disorienting thing in the room right now, because it meant the question was not really about whether he deserved this. It never had been. Lucy needed a home. Lucy needed stability. Lucy needed to grow up without the particular anxiety that comes from watching a parent count change at the grocery store and pretend not to. Those things were true, regardless of how Evan felt about his own worthiness, regardless of the guilt sitting heavy in his chest, regardless of the fact that he had spent 11 months believing he was barely keeping them above water, while Sarah had already ensured in silence that they would be fine. He knew all of this. He could lay it out clearly and logically step by step, and he still sat in the chair and felt unable to move, because knowing the right thing and feeling capable of doing it are not the same thing, and he had not yet found the bridge between the two. Victoria had been watching him work through it. She had not interrupted, had not offered efficiency or paperwork or any of the institutional tools that were clearly available to her. She had simply waited with the particular patience of someone who has recognized that the process happening across the desk from her is not a financial one and cannot be hurried by financial means. She picked up Sarah's letter from the desk and read through it a second time. Evan watched her do it, watched her eyes move across his wife's words, slower on the second pass than the first, stopping at certain lines, the way you stop when something lands differently than you expected. When she set it down and looked up, something in her face had changed. The professional distance she had maintained since he sat down was still there, but thinner now, worn down by what she had just read. She was not performing composure anymore. She was simply a person who had been moved by something and was choosing her words carefully because of it. "Mr. Carter," Victoria said, "I've been in this role for 11 years. I've sat across from a lot of people who've come into money in ways they weren't expecting. Inheritances, settlements, trusts that activate on a schedule the person didn't fully understand. And I've seen people struggle with it, feel like they didn't earn it, like accepting it means something about who they are." She glanced at Sarah's letter, then back at him. "But I've never seen a situation quite like this one." Evan looked at her without speaking. "Your wife knew she was dying," Victoria continued. "She knew that when she made these arrangements. She had time to change her mind, months of it, and she didn't. She made sure this would reach you, and she made sure it would reach you in a way that you couldn't refuse out of pride, while she was still alive to be argued with." Something moved briefly across Victoria's face. Not amusement, something warmer and more rueful than that. "That wasn't an accident. She knew you," he exhaled slowly. The pressure in his chest did not disappear, but it shifted, reorganized itself into something he could breathe around. "This isn't something you have to be worthy of," Victoria said. "It's not a reward for anything you did. It's what she decided to do with what she had left, and the person she decided to do it for was you and your daughter." She let that land. "That's not a transaction. That's just love. It doesn't require you to have earned it." Evan looked at Lucy. She was beginning to stir the deep stillness of sleep, starting to give way to the small, restless movements of a child surfacing toward wakefulness. In another minute, she would open her eyes and look at him and pat his face with both hands and ask if they were still at the bank, and he would say yes, and she would ask if they could get dinner after, and he would say yes to that too. And she would accept both answers completely, and without question, the way she accepted everything with a trust he had done nothing in particular to deserve, except show up every day without fail and keep her close. That was what Sarah had seen. That was what she had been protecting. He reached forward and picked up the card from the edge of Victoria's desk. He turned it over in his hand, once looking at the matte surface. The small embossed logo, the complete absence of any number or name on the face a card designed to be anonymous, to move through the world without drawing attention. The way Sarah had moved through the world, doing what needed to be done quietly, without asking to be seen. "What do I do now?" he asked. The question was practical, but it was also more than that. Victoria straightened slightly, and he watched her return with evident relief to the domain where she knew exactly what she was doing. "First, we document everything properly. Your identity, the succession paperwork, the beneficiary transfer. That's a few forms, not complicated." She pulled a folder from the drawer to her left and opened it on the desk between them. "Then we assign you a dedicated advisor, someone who works specifically with accounts at this level. They'll help you handle the immediate obligations first. The lease situation, any outstanding debt, anything with a deadline." She looked at him steadily. "After that, we build a plan, long-term, something that protects this for your daughter's future and makes sure it doesn't disappear into decisions made in a hurry." "The eviction," Evan said. "We can have that resolved before you leave today," Victoria said. "A single call to our legal liaison. It's a standard debt resolution. They deal with these situations regularly." He nodded once. The practicality of it, the clean procedural certainty that the eviction notice on his kitchen table could be neutralized by a phone call. Today, this afternoon, felt almost surreal. 11 months of accumulating pressure, of counting backward from whatever was left in the account, and finding it was never enough, of waking up at 3 in the morning and running the numbers again, as if they might have changed, and the answer had been sitting in a wooden box on his nightstand the entire time. He thought about being angry at her for that. He had expected to feel angry somewhere in the back of his mind when the full picture became clear. But he looked at the letter on the desk, her handwriting, the careful slope of her letters, the way she always pressed slightly too hard with a pen, and felt nothing that resembled anger. What he felt instead was the strange, aching gratitude of understanding something too late and being grateful for it anyway. Across the room, Claire Harmon stood up quietly, gathered her bag, and walked toward the exit. She did not look at Evan as she passed, but she moved differently than she had when he came in, without the comfortable authority of someone in a room that belongs to them. At the door, she stopped for just a moment, her hand on the glass. Then she pushed through and was gone. He did not watch her leave. He was looking at his daughter. The paperwork took 40 minutes. Lucy woke up halfway through, sat in the chair beside Evan, with the gravity of a child, who understood that something important was happening, and occupied herself by drawing on the back of a blank form that Victoria offered her without being asked, a quiet, practical kindness that Evan noticed and did not comment on. When they were done, Victoria walked him to the lobby. She shook his hand at the edge of the premier services area, where the lower lighting gave way to the marble and brass of the main floor, and she held the handshake one moment longer than necessary. "You'll hear from your advisor by tomorrow morning," she said. "And Mr. Carter, for what it's worth, what your wife did for that family was extraordinary. I hope you know that." "I'm starting to," he said. He walked out through the glass doors into the late afternoon. The light was going orange, the kind of angle that makes everything look slightly more deliberate than usual. Shadows long and specific across the sidewalk. Lucy had her arms around his neck and her chin hooked over his shoulder, fully awake, now watching the street behind him as he walked. "Daddy," she said. "Yeah, bug. Are we going home now?" He thought about the apartment, the eviction notice on the kitchen table, which would not be an eviction notice by tomorrow, the small kitchen with the crayon drawing on the table, the stick figure family, with 3 people in it, one of them with a halo. The wooden box on the nightstand, empty now, except for the letter, which he had folded carefully and put back in his jacket pocket before he left the desk. "Yeah," he said, "we're going home." She accepted this and looked back at the street content. He walked, and the card was in his pocket, and the letter was in his pocket, and the evening was coming in slow and steady over the city. He was not a different man than he had been this morning. He was the same man, with the same grief, and the same 4-year-old on his shoulder, and the same inability to fully understand how someone could love another person as thoroughly and as quietly as Sarah had loved him. That had not changed. It would not change, but he was not walking toward the edge of something anymore. He was walking back toward the center of his own life, carrying his daughter, carrying the card, carrying everything Sarah had decided he was capable of carrying. And this time, for the first time in 11 months, he believed her. He had not earned this. He knew that. He would spend a long time knowing it. But he would get up tomorrow, and the day after, and every day after that. And he would raise their daughter in the way that made the gift mean something. Not because he was worthy of it, but because Lucy was, and because that had been Sarah's entire point from the beginning. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.